Hey guys, in today's video, I'm going to talk about what you do if you have time left in your class, but your curriculum is already finished. How can you keep the student engaged in the lesson and occupied and still give a fulfilling lesson, even though you have 5 to 6 minutes left in class? Okay, so let's get right to it. When I am in class, I like to do each slide at least a minute, sometimes under. Some slides are definitely quicker than others, so you have to be mindful of that. But it's also super helpful to read comments about your student before you teach them, because a lot of teachers will give good feedback saying how some students read slower, so you need to be mindful of that to be managing the slides as you're going through them when you're teaching a student. So for an example, if I have a slideshow of 28 slides and I know my student very well and I know that they're a quick learner, I know that now when I'm doing my slides, I need to maybe use some extension skills on each slide. So for an example, if my student is learning about irregular verbs and they're reading a sentence and they're circling the verb as they go, I make sure that they know exactly what they're doing, make sure that they circle it, and make sure that they're reading nice and slow and that they are repeating any words that are mispronounced. That's number one always. But if they finish that slide fairly quickly, I may extend on that slide. So I may ask them another question about irregular verbs, or maybe I'll ask them to circle some sight words or underline some sight words. I might ask them about whatever topic that they're talking about in the slide. So if they're talking about walking a dog, I would say, hey, do you have a dog as a pet? If they do, that's great because that invites a lot more questions. If they don't, you can say, do they like dogs? Do they know where dogs live? Like, you can use different opportunities to extend on a lesson. So it really just depends on who the student is, what their pacing level is, and so you might want to extend on the slides as you go. Now, I find that if you know a student is going to work quickly, then you might want to extend from maybe the beginning of the slides. You might want to start extending if they're working through the slides quickly, or if you know the student is going to work quickly, I start from the beginning of the lesson extending on almost every single slide, depending on what I can get and what I can't. This not only helps them maintain a good pace of time, but it also is good because they're getting extra lesson within their lesson. They're getting more of that general conversation and talk. And that's actually really important when you're learning another language, to hear someone else talk and talk off topic. It kind of triggers their brain to say, oh, hey, I know what she's talking about. If they have no idea what you're talking about, when you're trying to extend, you're going to have to take it back a little bit and maybe ask them more basic questions. But it usually will trigger them to say, oh, hey, I know what she's talking about, and I can talk about that, even though it's not on the slides. It's using that repertoire that you already have, that cognition that you already have between that person. So it kind of, not kind of, it is a good thing to extend on slides. What you want to be careful of is you don't want to extend too much on a slide, and then that way you're actually getting behind in the lesson, because if you have a class right after that one, you only have, that 5 minute gap where you go from one lesson to the other. And sometimes if you're talking too much to a student, you're not going to have enough time to get to the other class. So you want to be really careful with that. Each class has to be a minimum of 25 minutes. So if you're finding yourself finished at 20 minutes, well, you need to fill in that gap if you want to get paid. Never ever close a class out before 25 minutes. Like, never. Do not do it. So that's what I'm talking about, is extending on the slides within the lesson. But if you find that you didn't keep up with the pacing, or you didn't realize you were going to go so fast and you have some time at the end, they have some slides usually at the end of the lesson that you can go, and they'll have some extension activities. They'll have maybe extra songs or extra word bubbles. Sometimes when you get to the older students, I'm finding there's no extra slides. There is just a blank whiteboard. I've made use of this whiteboard. So I will get to the end and I will either maybe ask them to draw a picture of like an animal we are talking about, or more importantly, before picture time, I can ask them about their vocabulary. So I always make sure I know what their vocabulary is in the beginning, what their main goal or objective of the lesson is. And then when I get to the end of the slideshow and I come to the whiteboard, I can ask my student, can you spell the word cone? And have them write it and then spell out each letter. Like they would write the word cone and then I'd make them say CONE. And then you have that. And then you go to the next vocabulary word and have them write that. I usually like to stick between 4 to 6 words depending on who they are as a student. Sometimes they'll fly through it, sometimes they won't. But this is a great opportunity for you to help them learn their vocabulary, their spelling, speaking, all engaging activities. And this will also help with your time build up to the 25 minutes. If they are struggling with that, that's actually great because now you're working on a skill that they definitely need, and you can know for the next time to, for either yourself or to write for the next teacher, hey, this is something that they could still work on and that would be helpful for them. If you're finding that they've gone through that pretty quick, that's great, but maybe you need some more extension, you can talk to them. What's their favorite color? How old are they? If you didn't cover those things in the beginning introduction, you can ask those questions now. You could draw pictures and maybe play charades with them, like, hey, what am I drawing? And then you can draw a picture and see if they can guess it. Vice versa, they can draw you a picture. One activity that I'm really loving lately, because I'm teaching a lot of the older kids now, is I will draw tic-tac-toe. And many of them already know how to play, so it's great. I can just draw out the board and I talk about who's going to go first, taking turns, and then we can play a couple of games of tic-tac-toe, and that really helps with the time. It helps them engage, it helps them be excited. There's a little bit of a competition. I'm not going to lie, I usually, like the younger ones, I'll let them win, if not the first time, maybe the second time. Like I try to be mindful. I really don't care if I win, and it's cool for them to, beat the teacher. But my older kids, I'll definitely try to beat them, and they're really good at it. They laugh and they know how to get me. Um, but I kind of go off their temperament. Like, how are they going to feel? And I'm not necessarily teaching them how to win or lose. I'm teaching them how to speak English. So to let them win when playing tic tac toe, like what's more important here? I just kind of go off of their temperament. But tic tac toe is a great game for at the end of your lesson, especially if you only have like 1 or 2 minutes left. You have a couple games of tic tac toe, you end the lesson. It's great. It's a great way to end. Um, a lot of them also know rock, paper, scissors, so that's something you can practice, or you can even teach them these games. Like if they don't know them already, you can say, hey, let me teach you this game. It's really fun, and show them how to play tic tac toe, show them how to play rock, paper, scissors. These are things that are in lessons early on, so it's not like they've never heard of it before. They may not remember it, but you could teach them something that now you have together too. Like you've built that repertoire with them. Like, hey, I taught you how to play tic tac toe, and the next lesson we get together, let's play tic tac toe, and you can really build on that. But it's important to have these kind of what do I want to say, tools in your toolbox. Because if you're finding yourself finishing a lesson at like 20 or 21 minutes and you still have a few minutes to go, you don't want to end that lesson. You want to give them extra practice and extra activities, extra extension. Never, never close before 25 minutes. Sometimes it's not only about like you not getting paid, but like the parents will get mad and they can report you and they can give you a bad rating because they are paying for 25 minutes. So you want to give them value for 25 minutes. So just keep that in mind. If any of you have any other ideas or suggestions or things that you do, please leave them in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you do to extend on your lessons or to, keep them going at the end. As always, please, if you could give my channel, if you could give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate all the support I get, and I look forward to hearing and seeing your comments down below. Thanks, guys.